I live in Springfield, not the famous one from The Simpsons, but a much more ordinary version, a suburban area clinging to the edge of a real city. It's the kind of place where the houses are all slightly different shades of beige, and the biggest excitement is when someone forgets to put their garbage cans away. My apartment building, a slightly rundown complex called the Elms, is located right on the edge of this suburban sprawl. What makes the Elms somewhat unique is the small grocery store located on the ground floor. It's nothing fancy, just a small, independently owned operation with a limited selection. Before I moved in, I did all my shopping at the large grocery chain on the other side of town. But I always forgot something. A key ingredient for dinner, a crucial cleaning supply, or just that one particular brand of yogurt I liked. So I started relying on the store downstairs for those quick, last-minute purchases. The store was run by its owner, Mark. He was the sole employee, cashier, stocker, and cleaner all rolled into one. He was a guy probably in his early 40s, with thinning brown hair and a perpetual look of weariness etched onto his face. The store was open late, until 10 p.m., and I was often the last customer to come in. Because of my late-night visits, Mark and I started to chat. He'd complain about how hard he worked, how small his profit margins were, and how difficult it was to compete with the big chains. He would tell me about suppliers and delivery schedules and broken freezers. I would listen patiently, occasionally offering a sympathetic nod or a word of encouragement. He would tell me stories, how his sales have gone down since the new street construction, and how he now barely breaks even. In return, I'd tell him stories from my own life. About my stressful job as a systems administrator, about the ridiculous office politics, about my weekend hiking trips. We'd talk about sports, about the local baseball team's chances, about the weather. It was easy, comfortable conversation, the kind you have with someone you see regularly and with whom you share a small, everyday connection. We even talked about movies and shared playlists of our favorite songs. Over the course of about 6 months, I became a regular at Mark's store. I liked the convenience, I liked the selection, and I genuinely liked chatting with Mark. He was always friendly, always willing to lend an ear. Sometimes I would even help him with his computer systems. I would look at his systems and make some improvements. I am a systems administrator, and this is my field of expertise. He seemed to appreciate it. I thought, perhaps naively, that Mark was a friend. Then one day, everything changed. My boss called me early in the morning, his voice tight with urgency. There was a major problem with the company's servers, a problem that threatened to shut down the entire operation. He needed me in the office as soon as possible. I said I would be there, but I needed time to get ready. My boss told me he was only 10 minutes away from my home and offered to pick me up, saving me the hassle of driving in rush hour traffic. I rushed to get ready, throwing on some clothes and grabbing my bag. As I hurried out of the building, I saw Mark opening up his store for the day. He was unlocking the doors and getting the newspaper. "Mark," I called out, "I'm in a huge rush. Can I grab some sandwiches to go? I won't have time for lunch today." He looked up a little surprised. "Sure, Emma, no problem." He went inside, and after a few minutes, he emerged with 3 wrapped sandwiches. "That'll be $20, he said. I handed him the money, grabbed the sandwiches, and ran to meet my boss. I thanked Mark quickly and promised to be back later. The day at work was even more chaotic than I had anticipated. The server issues were complex and persistent. I and my team worked tirelessly, troubleshooting, testing, and implementing fixes. I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about lunch. Finally, around 3 in the afternoon, when the worst of the crisis had passed, I remembered the sandwiches. I was famished. I unwrapped the first one, eager to finally eat. The smell hit me first, a faint but unmistakable odor of decay. I looked closer and my stomach churned. The bread was stale and slightly moldy, the ham was slimy and discolored, and the lettuce was wilted and brown. It was rotten, literally rotten. All 3 sandwiches were the same. A wave of nausea washed over me. I threw the sandwiches in the trash, feeling a mixture of disgust and disappointment. I was sad, honestly. I had been counting on those sandwiches, and the thought that Mark would sell me something so clearly inedible was unsettling. I was a good customer, and I thought we were friends. I thought perhaps he was having a bad day and didn't notice. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. When I finally returned home late that evening, exhausted and still hungry, I stopped by Mark's store as usual. I bought some milk, some eggs, and a loaf of bread. As he rang up my purchases, I casually mentioned the sandwiches. "Hey, Mark," I said, trying to keep my tone light and friendly. "Those sandwiches I bought this morning, they were, not so good. Actually, they were pretty rotten. I expected him to apologize, to offer a refund, maybe even to express some concern. I didn't want to make a big deal, just a friendly story so Mark could improve his business. Instead, he exploded. "What are you talking about?" he yelled, his face turning red. "Are you saying I sell bad products? Are you trying to put me out of business?" I was taken aback. "No, Mark, I'm just saying." "You have no proof," he interrupted, his voice rising. "You're just trying to cause trouble. You people are all the same. Always complaining, always trying to get something for nothing." He went on, ranting and raving about how hard he worked, how difficult it was to run a small business, how ungrateful everyone was. He accused me of lying, of exaggerating, of trying to ruin his reputation. Then he started insulting me. He told me I was a spoiled brat, that I didn't know anything about hard work, that I should just go F myself. I was stunned. I had never seen him like this. The friendly, chatty Mark I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by an angry, defensive, and frankly unpleasant man. I paid for my groceries in silence, my hands shaking. I couldn't bring myself to say another word. I just wanted to get out of there. As I walked home, I replayed the scene in my head, trying to understand what had just happened. I was hurt and angry and deeply disappointed. The next day, fueled by a desire for some form of retribution, I ran into Mrs. Henderson, a senior lady who lived on my floor. She was the quintessential busybody, always eager to chat and always up to date on all the building gossip. She also spent a lot of time with other people. I decided to share my experience with her, framing it in a way that I knew would resonate with her, and, by extension, with the other residents of the Elms. "Mrs. Henderson," I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially, "you won't believe what happened to me at Mark's store yesterday." I proceeded to tell her the story of the rotten sandwiches, emphasizing the fact that I believed Mark was intentionally selling substandard products to the residents of the building. I embellished the story slightly, making Mark sound even more callous and indifferent. I told her I bought the sandwiches and they were moldy and smelled bad. "Can you imagine?" I said, shaking my head in disgust. "Selling rotten food to his own neighbors, it's outrageous." Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened with indignation. "That's terrible," she exclaimed. "Absolutely terrible. Someone should do something about that." I knew that she would spread the word, and she did. By the end of the day, the entire building knew about the rotten sandwiches and Mark's alleged dishonesty. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to hit him where it really hurt, his business. So, I decided to take more direct action. The next day, I visited the local sanitary inspection office and filed a formal complaint about Mark's store. I detailed the incident with the rotten sandwiches and expressed my concerns about the overall hygiene and food safety standards at the store. I included photos of my sandwiches. A few days later, I saw a health inspector walk into Mark's store. I watched from my apartment window as the inspector spent several hours meticulously examining the shelves, the refrigerators, and the storage areas. A week later, a notice appeared on the store's door announcing that it would be closed for several days for maintenance and renovations. I later learned that the sanitary inspection had uncovered several violations, including expired food items, improper food storage, and inadequate sanitation practices. Mark was fined several $100s and forced to spend several thousand more to rectify the violations. Now, every time I returned from a shopping trip to the large grocery chain, my arms laden with bags full of products, I would make a point of stopping by Mark's store. I would walk in, make eye contact with Mark, and purchase the single cheapest candy he sold, usually a small, individually wrapped piece of generic hard candy. As I left the store, I would ostentatiously throw the candy into the garbage can right in front of the store. I wanted Mark to know that I was still thinking about him, that I hadn't forgotten what he had done. The garbage was overflowing, so I made a point of throwing it beside the garbage, and I could see that my actions were having an effect. I noticed that my neighbors, who used to frequent Mark's store, were now avoiding it. The store was becoming increasingly empty, the shelves less full. I don't know if Mark ever realized the full extent of my involvement in his misfortune, but I suspect he did. I would often catch him staring at me with a mixture of anger, resentment, and perhaps a hint of regret. I hope he is happy that he saved some money with those sandwiches. The rotten sandwiches.